Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Mm. Well, we saw virtually an SOS message from you complaining about the situation of senior high schools in Upper West, acute food shortage, and you were threatening to maybe close down the schools. In some instances, they say that you had no choice but to open up. Give us an idea how bad the situation was then, because we are also understanding that you've received some stocks. But before we go there, how bad was the situation when you issued the SOS?
Well, at that time, there were some schools that really ran out of stock. Indeed, there were schools that were completely out. Other schools were feeding the students with just one type of food. For instance, gari and beans. Some students were fed with gari and beans for over 3 weeks. And so that's how the situation was.
There were some schools that had nothing.
Yeah, virtually nothing. They were just left with just a few days rations, or a week rations. There were some schools like that, yeah.
And you said some schools were feeding students gari and beans for days.
Yes.
With nothing else, no other thing. It was just they had gari and then they had beans.
Yeah, that was the situation at that time. Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps if you can explain to us how this, because perhaps I when I was going to school, I know that you had matrons who were in charge, the school authorities were in charge of procuring some of those things, and so they were actually the ones who received the money from government or made the purchases, and the money comes from government to them. What is the arrangement currently, and how come when you have run out of stocks at schools, you can't do anything?
The arrangement currently is that Buffer Stock, the company, does the supply of the staples to the schools, while the school is allowed to purchase perishables. But the staples like rice, bread flour, maize, gari, beans, soya beans, mackerel, sugar, these are supplied by the Buffer Stock company to the schools directly. So that is the situation. So when the stock is running out, what you do is you reach out to the regional Buffer Stock coordinator and to the free SHS coordinator, and of course to your authorities, and inform them that this is the situation. But the problem we had was that many of the suppliers were owed some money. So previously, when you go to them, when you are running out and you go to them, some can supply you a few bags whilst you wait. But it came to a point that they were refusing to supply because they said they were owed some money for supplies they had supplied and had not yet been paid. So that's how the situation came to where it was.
Let me ask for, just for the sake of clarification, one, you talk about staples and then you talk about perishables. So you as school authorities are able to buy perishables. I'm guessing you're talking about usually tomatoes, onions, those kind of things that won't last for days.
Yes, tomatoes. That is fresh tomatoes. But tin tomato is supplied by Buffer Stock. But fresh tomatoes, onions, okra, and salt, these are firewood. These are the perishables that we are talking of.
Okay. So the part of the money for food then automatically, a small part, comes to the schools that they use for the perishables.
That's what we refer to as money for perishables, yes. Mm.
With that part, were you getting the money on time?
That is also another, because the money was coming in bits and pieces. And sometimes you just have to go and credit some of the things to come and feed the students because the money was actually coming in bits and pieces. And then when it comes, because you owe, you already use that money to pay the suppliers that you owe. So of course you're just accumulating new debts as you go along. That was the situation.
Okay, so you have to have your own suppliers who trust you to pay back.
Exactly.
So that you can take on credit when you do not have the money.
Exactly.
Okay, so on the matter of the staples, I realize you said a few things. You talk about the buffer stock. You say you speak to, is it GS or the buffer stock when you are running out of supply?
It's buffer stock that is in charge of the supply of these food items to the schools. And in each region, there is a buffer stock coordinator, regional coordinator. So, of course, he is the one that we communicate directly to. But, of course, you also have to send a message to your management, to your authorities, that is the district director and the regional director, to inform them that this is the situation that you have found yourself. Then we also have in each region the free SHS coordinator who coordinates the work of the free SHS in the activities of the free SHS in the region. So these are the people you reach out to immediately when you are running out.
Because after saying this, you then talk about suppliers. Do those people get you in touch with a supplier, or you already know the person who's supposed to supply to you?
Buffer stock does the procurement. That means they get they have their suppliers. They have what they refer to as their bulk suppliers. So what we do is we sit and we receive. As far as the question of procurement of these supplies are concerned, our duty is to sit and receive. When they bring, we take. So sometimes what happens is we are giving a list of those suppliers who will be supplying your school with what items. But in many cases, even those bulk suppliers end up not supplying. And so you have to make some kind of local arrangements in consultation with the regional buffer stock coordinator.
A lot of the food items you are talking about are produced within your enclave. A huge part of the north. Maize, rice, all those things that majority of us get down the south. We usually get majority of it from the north. How come availability of food there, or is there a problem there, or is it the whole arrangement that is just not helping?
Well, that one we cannot say much because, like I said, it is buffer stock that engages the suppliers. How they do that, we are not aware. Sometimes they ask us to give them some names of suppliers that we think are capable of supplying. I think one of the conditions that they have is that the supplier should have the capacity to supply before he or she is paid. So we don't know the criteria for the selection of the suppliers and how the suppliers are taken. However, what we know is that buffer stock engages suppliers to supply to the school.
Oh, okay. So when you're managing schools and you're at the point where you've run out of supply and perhaps you are feeding students gari and beans, how does that affect everything? Explain to us what happened in those kind of situations, because some students, I recall vividly, when I was going to school, some people don't even want to get near gari and beans. Somebody is not interested in rice, so you won't find them near the dining hall at that point in time. What happens in the schools when you only have gari and beans?
Well, that is the situation, so you have to manage with that. You have to manage with what you have, and of course, you have as the administrator of the school. What you have to do is you have to do a lot of talking to the students. You have to keep explaining to them and calming them down so that they can manage with what is available. That is what we do. But of course, it does affect every facet of the school life, because when the students don't eat properly and they don't eat on time, then you can imagine that it will affect their learning, it will affect the teaching, it will affect virtually almost every facet of the school life.
Do you also tend to relax the rules a bit so that those who can perhaps maybe find food outside can do so? Or you still have to maintain a strict discipline?
That's a very interesting question. Well, That is a dire situation. That's a situation that you just have to manage. But if you relax the rules, of course, you can imagine that there will be a lot of indiscipline. There's a whole lot of other things that you do not bargain for, because you can find, if you find about half of your students in town in the name of going to buy food and other things, you can imagine that teaching and learning and all other activities will be affected. So you find ways and means to try and contain the situation whilst not sacrificing the welfare of the students.
But I am sure it's a very tough task enforcing discipline among students who are being fed one meal for weeks.
You can say it again.
A couple of things you usually fall on. There are some schools that usually do school farms. Do you do that?
Yeah, there are some schools that do have school farms. Yeah, there are some schools that do have school farms, but the problem is how long can that take?
Okay.
There are also some schools where you had the PTAs coming in to support. Some schools, I hear some old students came in to support, and some schools, maybe some parents came in to support. I don't have facts and figures with regards to these, but the issue is how far can this send you? That is.
I realize you said PA. I hear now you have parents association, or have parent teacher association.
Well, that is something that is still being worked on. Yeah, the role of the parents in the school. So some term it PTAs, some term it PAs. We are still looking for the right term to use with regards to the parent association.
Well, I understand you have some supplies now.
Yes. After our SOS that we sent out on Friday last week, we got some supplies. At least we got 100 bags of rice, 100 bags of maize, 100 bags of bread flour, 100 bags of sugar, and some 50 jerrycans of vegetable oil. These were sent to the region and which were distributed to the schools. But of course, looking at the quantities, you can imagine that it will just last a week.
I thought you were talking about a school. I thought 100 bags were meant for one school.
No. It was for the region. So, but on Monday, we received another 1,000 bags of rice for distribution to the school, and these have since been distributed to some of the schools in the region. So we had 100 bags of rice on Friday. Then on Monday we had 1,000 bags of rice too. Meanwhile, we have been told that there are bulk supplies that are bringing in other items. We don't know how soon they will be there. We were promised that by yesterday, possibly they should start arriving. I'm yet to cross-check to see if they arrived yesterday.
Okay. So you're getting beats. You have gotten some. More is being promised.
Yes.
But what you have currently, can it last you at least 2 weeks, or it will be less?
With the supply of the 1,000 bags of rice that has come in, let's say we're looking at 2-3 weeks, a month maximum.
How many schools, as chairman of CHAS, how many schools are under your umbrella?
We have 30 senior high schools. We have 3 technical schools, and recently, with the absorption of the TVET into the free SHS system, I think we have 4 or 5 more that have been added to the region. So we are originally dealing with 33 schools, but with the TVET schools that have been added, I think we are looking at around 37, 38 schools in the region.
37, 38 schools that you have to distribute all this to.
Yes, please. But take note that some of the schools are purely day schools.
Okay.
And they do the one hot meal a day.
Okay. So their needs are much more different from those who are boarding and day.
In a way. But of course, when we talk about money issues, then of course they are even worse hit because I talked about perishables coming in. So even when we get the boarding schools get the perishables, the day schools they don't have. So they are relying on the recurrent fees, and very little of the recurrent fees have come in. So things for exams, things for maintenance, things for stationery, teaching and learning materials, all these things are under recurrent expenditure. And very little of that has come in. So the day schools are really, really hard hit. They are really, really badly hit. Okay. In fact, they might even be worse off than the boarding schools.
Oh, okay. So they have to rely on the second part of the monies we were talking about, monies meant for administration.
Yes, the recurrent expenditure.
Okay, and they are not getting it. So they're having the same problem, but theirs is worse.
In a different way, yes. The same problem because they are also hard hit, really hard hit.
I am wondering how you think this problem. I know nowadays you have to rely largely on government, and I understand that you have to be very careful in sending SOS messages to Parents Association or anything. So how? Okay, I'm going to ask one: how do you cope? Two, how do you resolve? How do you think this can be resolved in the long term, properly?
How do we cope? Well, we are managing, like I said, with what we have. We just have to manage, do prudent management. With the little resources that come in, you apportion it in such a way that at least it can help you to get somewhere. The long and short of it all is that in all these that you are doing, you are looking at the welfare of the students and also carrying on with the teaching and learning so that these are not adversely affected. So, like I said, one time what we were doing was we were borrowing from each other. For instance, if I have rice, another school has maize, and now I'm running out of maize, I go to that school and I borrow for the maize. So that is what we were doing until of late, like I said, when almost all the schools were hard hit by the shortage I talked of. So that is how we were managing, borrowing from each other. And then, like I said, sometimes you have to dip into your pocket as the head of the school to actually buy some supplies. For instance, you get to the dining hall, there's no sugar. You have to dip into your pocket and then get a bag of sugar to come and solve the immediate problem. I know of some heads who have to buy vegetable oil and other materials so that the students can survive. That is how we are managing.
And then and then your own thoughts on how you think this can be resolved, because I know that there's a certain sense where a lot of you school heads are reluctant to speak on solutions and everything. You take what you're given. If you don't have, you manage. If you get, you use. But to a large extent, you are sitting right in front of it, and you have the advantage of being the CHAS regional chairman. What solutions can be explored that will do with this supply problem?
It'll be off-head. It'll be difficult to say. Maybe we need to sit down and do a little more of thinking, a little more of engagement with the various stakeholders to see how we can move forward from here. But just quickly, what I will say is that there will be the need to sit down and talk. With maybe buffer stock as to going forward. What are the plans? What arrangements have been put in place so that we don't get back to the situation that we have found ourselves? Indeed, the minister has engaged, I think, in the last 2 weeks, he has engaged Charles Pufferstock and the GES headquarters. He has engaged us twice to talk, look at the way forward. I think we need more of that, and I think we need more of Pufferstock to be telling us exactly the arrangements that they are putting in. They have told us some arrangements, but we need more concrete arrangements they have put in, maybe with deadlines and so on, so that we know that at this particular time, this is what we are expecting. At this particular time, this is what we are expecting, so that we don't get back to the situation that we found ourselves.
So a lot more opening up, a lot more conversation around the situation. And then perhaps Charles can also say, maybe you should try this, try that, it will work.
Exactly.
Sit around the table and have a conversation.
Exactly.
Then I let me land by saying that you must be a very busy man, because majority of the time I'm guessing headmasters are on your neck trying to find solutions to their problems.
Definitely. You are their immediate contact, of course. So when they have the problems, you are the one that they will have to come to, and then you will now also have to find a way of letting it get to management.
Well, we are hoping that you get the further supplies that have been promised, and we're hoping the situation improves. But thank you very much for sharing these details with us this morning.
You're welcome.
Mr. Magnus Innocent there is the Upper West Regional Chairman of CHAS.